So we are looking at the Compliance Management System, the CMS for short. The CMS is basically anything that you want to manage on a frequency basis. So if you have in your risk assessment identified that you need to manage a specific risk, say for instance it is a risk that is managed with a checklist. The checklist is most probably explained, and the reason why you need to do the checklist in a document. Okay, if it's a mandatory checklist, for instance, it would be part of a procedure that explains why you need to do specific checklists. For instance, you might want to do a vehicle daily checklist, or you might need to do a hygiene swab test every week, or you might have to do an inspection on a monthly basis, or in ISO you need to do an internal audit every 6 months, for instance. So all of that can be managed within your management system, your CMS. What the CMS does, it tells you if there's a compliance standard. So we've got construction regulations, okay, that we're looking at here. If you've got a specific project or a specific workplace, you can put it in this section here. So we've got a specific project that's XYZ. Your project can also be a specific workplace, as I mentioned. The workplace would be specific areas, your zoning, for instance, that you have in your factory or in your plant, that you manage and that you risk assessed with all your activities. So the project label can also be changed to workplace. Your management measure is a description of what you want a person to do. So it's a site meeting or statistic analysis, or we have verify housekeeping, for instance, in this specific demo that I'm doing. This is set up by the administrator of your system, depending on what you've identified in your risk assessment, what your management procedures are saying, and then you identify what management system, what management measures you want to create to manage the compliance of your own management system. It is important to create the correct management measures, because your management measures will show your ultimate compliance against your management measures that you've identified, which would align with your management system and ensure your risks are mitigated correctly. This section here is your legal standard. This legal standard, we don't give the actual legal register to you. We just tell you, is there a legal standard or legislation standard that you need to be aware of? Yes or no? Applicable phase would be, are you in a pre-construction phase or construction phase, or are you in a closure permit, or are you in operational phase? Most of our clients are in operational phase. They work from a already established system or already established factory or plant. Your start date is also when your financial year starts. And the reason why we have the financial year start date is because we look at a 12-month period for compliance. So how well that you manage your management system within a 12-month period. The management system, your CMS, will revert back to compliance at the start date, which is your financial year end. So your statistical analysis runs in line with your financial year end, so that your reporting, especially if you are a listed company, that your reporting can be in line with your financial year end. So that would be your start date. Your frequencies, how often do you want this done? Weekly, monthly, yearly, biannually, 3 yearly, 2 yearly. So you choose your frequency, how often you want this to be done. The next due date is obviously the date that it's applicable. So the system looks at the start date and then the next due date and your frequency to ensure that that Elint communicate to the responsible person who is responsible for the specific action. Your grace period, this is how many days before my due date do I need to let the user, the responsible person, know of a specific management measure that is required to be done. So Elint will send out an email 3 days before the 17th of December, which would be the 14th of December, to the responsible person saying there's a site meeting in 3 days and you need to attend that. Your responsible person, you identify responsible person. There are 3 levels or three responsible people that you can add to the Elint list. Elint will show you the positions of those responsible people. We normally say that don't just add one responsible person to a management measure, because if that person is off sick or on leave or not available, then you have a second person that received the email and can follow up. So normally you'll have people that stand in for each other to linked into this section so that you can make sure the work is actually done. The escalation does not happen from responsibility 1 to responsibility 2 to responsibility 3. Escalation happens as a hierarchy. So your responsibility 1 would have a manager as part of their setup in the back end, which the administrator sets up, and that manager will receive an email saying that the responsible person did not do a specific task. So that's how escalation works. Your sensitivity is how many times can I actually fail a management measure before it logs a specific continual improvement, before it tells me that I'm totally non-compliant. The reason why we have sensitivity is because in some pieces of legislation, it could be that legislation is old, it could be that the legislation haven't changed since technology has changed. So for instance, we have a mining company, and in the Mining Act it says the mine's gate needs to be locked. If the mine gate is locked, then you are legally compliant. But with the changing of times, we don't have locked gates anymore. We've got controlled booms with security. So the legislation never changed to say that it needs to be secured. It just says it needs to be locked with a lock and key. So with the sensitivity, it allows us to say, okay, you're not compliant to the legislation, but you're actually over and above the legislation. You're controlling your access. So we give the sensitivity, so for instance 15, so they will never fail in a 12-month period, because they're actually not failing the legislation. They're not failing the legislation. So that's why we have the sensitivity. And again, it's all dependent on you and how your administrator will put it up. You don't have to use the sensitivity the way I've explained it, but it's there for a reason. This section here shows you if you are compliant or non-compliant, partially compliant, and it changes color as the compliance change. These tabs on your right are all tabs that you can click on if they're highlighted like this one to show that there's a specific attachment to it. So if I click on view incident, it will open the failures of that specific management measure that's linked to that specific management measure. If we just go down here, we can say there's a report, so it's statistic analysis. So every month they need to put in a specific report. So if I click on that, it will open those reports for me to show me this is what people need to do to stay compliant. If I look at this one also, it tells me there's a checklist linked to this management measure. If I click on it, it takes me to the checklists, and it's the PPE checklist that needs to be done to make sure that people are compliant. If you complete the checklist, it automatically tells Elint that that management measure was completed successfully. Again, if we look at the black bar here, you can, as you've seen before, you can filter on your left. You can look at, I only want to see compliant, I want to see what's partially compliant, or I want to see what's non-compliant. If you work with numerous sites with the same type of management measures, or if you want to import a specific process flow which can also be managed in this fashion, you can upload a CSV file. The CSV file will then populate your specific management measures. The CSV file must be created within the format that we provide, so that Elint understands exactly what needs to be populated and in which fields needs to be populated properly. For Elint to understand that you have actually completed the management measure in time, you have to, as a user, so the responsible person will receive the email, and they will go into the system and they will select a specific management measure and go and complete it. Now, if I say on the 18th, which is today, I make a note and I might say last inspection for 2018. I can add a file if I want to. I can actually add numerous files if I want to, and I save it. It will give me a tick saying that I've actually completed this task. If I miss completing the task, Elint will raise a continued improvement that we have seen, which is an incident saying that I've failed the management measure, and an email will go to the line manager to say that Rolene has failed a management measure. If you want to see what you have done over a period of time, you can just open your screen and you can see what you have done. If you want to have a look at the detail of what was captured under a specific management measure, you can click on the wording and it opens up the history of what was captured. If there was a specific document attached, you can click on this link and it will open the document that was attached to it. What's also important to note is people will only see the management measures that they are responsible for. They will not see everything. So if you assign a management measure to a specific person, they will only see what is applicable to them. If you are the administrator of the system, you will obviously be able to see everybody's management measures to make sure that they're compliant. That's monitoring tasks. The monitoring tasks are all linked into the management measures saying, I have done this task and Elint is compliant. If we go into our monitoring reports, these are all monitoring reports. So we've got different monitoring reports, and again, the administrators got the back end right to create these monitoring reports themselves. So if we click on view of a report, it gives you what was done in October and November. It gives you your values that was added. These are only values, no wording or letters added to the capturing, because we are drawing graphs from it. If you're in the red, it means that you're over your target or over your limits that was set. And if you're in the green, it means that you are compliant. This section here gives you a little graph that just shows you the trend that your management measures or that your reporting follows. If you want to add a report, you click on add a report. You can, if you look at download monitoring CSV template, if you have a lab that is recording specific readings like water quality readings or chemical readings, you can download the report, send it to the lab, and ask the lab to use your CSV for their reporting, and then you can just upload the CSV, and you don't have to manually capture the data. But to complete the report, you choose a start date and an end date, and you put your numeric numbering in, and you save. You can attach your documentation if you want to. So if we go back to that report and we say that's what it looks like now, but if I wanted to add files to it as supporting records, I could do that. That is also available for me to do. If you want to track your LTIR, your lost time injury rate, you can do that. We've got some calculations within Elint, but you will have to have this report, the man-hour report, linked to your system. So you can split the hours. You can say hours worked of your employees, contractor hours, however you want to capture your hours, and then you choose lost time injury rate, and Elint will work it out itself. So the only thing that you will physically have to import in this section would be your hours, and you'll see you can't put anything in there, and you save it. And looking at that report, you'll see you're still compliant in your LTIR because there's no lost time injuries currently in your system, but this Elint will work it out itself. It does not work out a specific calculation over a 12-month period. It works out that specific month's rating, but we use the information to develop a dashboard for you, which will show to you when we look at the dashboards, to make sure that if you are on a 12-month rolling period, we can actually show you your LTIR over a longer period of time and not just a month. And that is your monitoring reports and your monitoring possibilities of creating different reports and different monitoring within Elint.